Hello again, .NET programmers. In this video, I'll show you how to do some debugging, tracking down a problem in a program. This is unfortunately a very common activity for us programmers. We'll use SuperAdventure, the sample program from my Learn C# by Building a Simple RPG course. I'll have a link in the description below if you want to take a look at that. Someone finished all of the lessons in the course and decided to add more features to the game, which is pretty cool. One thing he added was the ability to play as a human, an elf, or a dwarf. Each of those races gets a different amount of hit points per level instead of the 10 points per level that's in the original game. However, there's a problem. When the player is completely healed after a battle, the program still gives 10 hit points per level instead of the correct amount for the race. We're going to track down the bug and fix it. The first thing to do with any bug is verify the problem. So we'll start up the game here and pick a dwarf, and we see we have 30 hit points. So now I go north, fight a rat. The rat did 1 point of damage. I have 29 hit points. That works good so far. Attack again. The rat did another 1 point of damage. I have 28. Still good. Attack again. I defeated the rat, but now my hit points have reset to 10. 10 per level instead of the 30 per level that I should have. So we see that the problem is real. Now we'll take a look at the code to figure out where the problem is coming from. If I look at the controls, we have a label here called LBL hit points that shows the player's hit points. I'm going to go into the code behind the form and hit Control F, LBL hit points. This will find every place we use that label. Here on line 91 we have label hitpoints.text equals the player's current hit points. Move over here and try to do find next, or we can press the F3 and we see this line, LBL hitpoints.text equals the player current hit points. Go to the next one, same thing. Search again, same thing. And we finish searching the file. So we know the label is always showing the value that's in the player's current hit points. Now we'll try to figure out if there's a problem with the player's current hit points. If you want to find every place it's used, you can right click on it and scroll down to find all references. And it will show you down here in the bottom of Visual Studio every place that the player's current hit points is used. We see in the living creature class, which is the base class for the player class, we're setting the value, and here we see in SuperAdventure on line 88 that we have the player current hit points equals the player maximum hit points. If I double click on this, it takes me to that part of the code. And this is the code where we move somewhere and we completely heal the player. The problem we're having is after the player wins a battle and we heal them completely, it's not setting it to the correct value. So this might be where it's happening. We can also right click on maximum hit points, find all its references, and if we look down here, we see in the player class on line 171, maximum hit points equals level times 10. That sounds a lot like our problem. So we'll double click on that and see where it's at. It's inside the add experience points function. So when you add experience points after a battle, the player's maximum hit points is being set to their level times 10. But for a dwarf we want that to be times 30, for a human we want it to be times 15. So this is probably the source of our problem. Now that we think we know where the problem is, we can check it out when we run the program by putting a debug breakpoint at this line of code. What you do is go over to this little column to the left of the source code and click it, and you'll see a red circle and you'll see that line turn red. So now when we run the program in debug mode, when it gets to this line, it's going to stop and let us look at the variables. So we'll click start and we'll play the game again. I'll select human this time with 15 hit points. Attack. So we defeated the rat, and we're in the add experience points method. If we hover over maximum hit points, we see the value right now. We can also go down to the bottom of Visual Studio and click on locals, and we see the player class. When we expand it, we see all the values. Current hit points, current location, maximum hit points. Now we can go to the next line in the code by pressing F10, or up at the top you have buttons to step into the code, step over the code, or step out of the code. You use step into if that line calls a function and you want to go down into that function and see what's happening. Use step over if you just want to go to the next line in the same function. So we'll use step over right here and go to the next line. When we hover over it, we see maximum hit points is 15. We go to the next line, and now we see maximum hit points is 10. The current level times 10. So this really looks like it's our problem. If I go and click continue from the menu or F5, the game will continue running, and now we see that the hit points is 10. So it really looks like this is where our problem is at. Let's take a look at the code behind for the form and see where we're setting the value for the maximum hit points. Here we see the code. When the human button is clicked, we create a new player with 15 current hit points and 15 maximum hit points. When you click the dwarf button, we create a new player with 30 hit points and 30 maximum hit points. But the problem is, inside the player class, we don't look and see what race the character is, so we don't multiply by 15 or 30. Instead, we still multiply by 10. Let's scroll back up and take a look at the properties we have in our player class. And we don't have the race of the player anywhere in here. So what we need to do when we create the player, pass in the race, so that when we recalculate the maximum hit points, we can multiply by the correct value. I'm going to do that by changing the player constructor. First, I'm going to create a property to hold the character's race, just public string race with a get and a set. Then in the constructor, I'm going to add a new parameter, string race, and then inside the constructor code, I'm going to set the race property equal to the race parameter value. Now we need to go back to Super Adventure, and if you see, our player constructors now have an error because we're not passing in the race. And if you hover over player in the line where we're creating the instance of the player class, you'll see the new parameter list. We're missing the race. So I'm just going to add human has a new parameter there, and dwarf has a new parameter for the dwarf class. Then I'll go back to the player class and to the add experience points function. If race equals human, maximum hit points equals level times 15. Else, if race equals dwarf, maximum hit points equals level times 30. And I'm going to stick a final else in here just in case it ever has a bad value. And I'm going to move the maximum hit points equals level times 10 into there. Now we'll rerun the program and see if the fix has worked. We select human, we have 15 hit points. Attack a rat, we defeated it. Press the F10 key or the step over button and we watch the code execute. We saw that it detected the race was human and now it's setting the maximum hit points equal to the level times 15. We continue and we see that our hit points are 15 instead of 10. So that fixed the problem. Using the debugger and using the right click find all references is a good way to track down problems in your code. Of course, there are bigger problems that get more involved for debugging, but once you know these techniques, you'll have a good start on tracking down any bugs that may come up in your code. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.